Hey, Dave Melenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I am stoked to learn a new word today, and I want you guys to just put on your thinking cap for a minute because we're going to learn a new word. And the new word is Frugalpreneur. And we are going to talk with Sarah St. John. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you are involved with Podseam. So before we go into the Frugalpreneur, tell me about Podseam.
That's actually a podcast production agency I just recently launched.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess my backstory, it'll probably make more sense when I go into that as to why I started that. But
Okay.
that's my podcast production agency.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, then, yeah, we'll jump into that. So tell the world, Sarah, what is a frugalpreneur? Because I have my own idea, but it's probably way off. So why don't you fill us in on what that word means to you and how that came about?
Okay, sure. Yeah, and it's actually a made up word.
Oh,
I'll
wait a minute. So it's not even in a dictionary?
Well, I haven't checked, but I highly doubt it, though that maybe that should be my goal is
There
to.
you go. That'd be awesome.
But frugalpreneur to me is just basically an entrepreneur on a budget. Well, my podcast is called Frugalpreneur, building a business on a bootstrap budget.
Okay.
And how I even got the idea was, well, I guess now would be a good time to go into my
Yeah,
backstory.
for sure.
It kind of all goes together. So, I started my entrepreneurial journey back in 2008, and I had 6 different jobs that year.
Wow.
Not at the same time, but throughout the course of the year. And I realized that I wanted to work for myself. So I started a photography business.
Okay.
And I realized that while I like taking photos of animals and architecture and landscapes, I didn't like taking photos of people, but
Okay.
that's where the money is. I was doing portraits and weddings.
Okay.
So I decided, well, and actually the bigger issue than that was just the expense to maintain and upkeep, equipment and lighting and
Sure.
software and all that. So I decided I wanted to try something online. And so I started researching all these different ways to make money online and how to do it affordably. And I came across all these like tools and resources that you can use and the different ways to make money online. So I got the idea to write a book called Frugalpreneur to kind
Okay.
of go over all of like the different ways to make money online and how to do it on a budget. And then it was while I was writing the book that I got the idea to start a podcast, also called Frugalpreneur.
Okay.
And it was just going to coincide with the book, like be an extra, I guess, marketing avenue and just be a few episodes. But I was getting more leverage and traction from the podcast than the book. So
There
I
you
just
go.
I decided to keep going with the podcast.
Good.
I loved all the connections I was making and conversations um and I was editing my own podcasts. And
Okay.
so it was while I was doing that I was and I was enjoying it and people said I was doing a pretty good job and it's like, well, why not start um a podcast production agency and basically get paid to do it for other people.
Sure.
So so
Okay.
that's what I do now. But yeah, so definitely all focused in on podcasting now, but I did do like drop shipping, affiliate marketing, blogging,
Okay.
all these different little things. And so, but I landed on podcasting.
Well, that's so cool. So I want to go back to 2008, if you don't mind, for a minute, because when you say 6 jobs in a year, I mean, I as a business coach for myself, I have clients that I help with hiring. We're working in the HR stuff, doing a variety of different things. And when I come across a resume that has gone through 6 jobs in a year, I have to say, full disclosure, that I'm leery right off the bat, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, how did that had to mess with your mind, first of all, because
Mhm.
that's just got to be a tough transition every couple months to try and find something new.
Mhm.
So did it occur to you like at the end of this that, hey, maybe I should be working for myself, or did you kind of know all the way along? What was some of the things you were thinking through that, Sarah?
Well, and what's interesting is I've had jobs before where I've worked there for like a decade. So, I
Okay.
mean, it wasn't normal for me to
Okay.
have,
Sure.
it wasn't like I would get bored with something and leave. It was more like one I was laid off from, one I was let go because it was a sales position and
Okay.
realized that, I mean, I guess as a business owner, you're kind of a salesperson, but when you're not selling like something you're passionate about, then it's a different kind of ball game.
Sure.
Um, and let's see, I'm trying to remember. I can't even remember all the different. I think I did leave one because it was like a debt collection type of place, and then I
Okay.
got an offer for a veterinary clinic, and I had always wanted as a receptionist, and I had always wanted to work at a vet clinic or with animals.
Gotcha.
So that was one that I actually left for something else. But anyway,
Okay.
but yeah, I just kind of realized that I didn't really like working for other people and being under their, like, they could fire you anytime,
Sure.
or
Yep.
or lay you off if business isn't going well. And then, like, with COVID and all that, and all these people getting laid off or furloughed and whatnot, it's like you don't really have control over the situation,
Sure.
basically.
Sure.
Whereas when you're your own business owner, I mean, there's a lot of things you can't control either, as far as how the economy's going and
Right.
things of that
Yep.
nature. But
Yep.
uh I feel like you have a little more control in what decisions are made,
Sure.
um and plus just not having, to worry about time clocks, and just, I don't know, because as an employee, there's only so much money you can make,
Right.
and it's
Sure.
based on how much time you're putting in.
Sure.
Um, Whereas if you're a business owner, I mean, technically the sky is the limit,
Sure.
there's
Sure.
generally not a cap that you could earn.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Well, and a
so
lot
yeah.
of times we talk about, there's a lot of people that listen that are in a situation where they might have a side hustle, they call it. They might be, looking, with envy at their neighbor who owns a business, and they think, oh, it's the grass is so green. I mean, I've been on both sides. The majority of my life, I've owned my own business and I've had control of my own destiny, so to speak. But I know there's a lot of people that aren't there. When you finally realized that you wanted to work on your own, was it like an instant, you jumped in full time on your own, or did you kind of ease your way in? How did that transition work for you, Sarah?
Yeah, definitely eased in, because I still had bills to pay, and plus I wasn't sure on. Well, I mean, I did the photography thing for a few years, but after that, I didn't know what I was gonna do,
Okay.
and so I was kind of jumping around, trying this, that, and the other. And so, yeah, definitely needed to pay the bills and have. So I guess it was more of a side hustle
Sure. Okay.
initially. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no right or wrong to it. I just think it's helpful for our listeners to really understand, because, we all have these ideas and visions of what it looks like. One day, you have a boss that you don't like, and then he or she says something to you and you say, forget it, I quit. And then you go home, and then that night you start your own company, and then the next day you're, big smile and life is good, right? I mean,
Hmm.
that's somehow some people have that, that thought process. And I know for a lot of people that I talk to, it is like your situation, Sarah, where it just evolves and it starts at a spot, but you still have a day job for whatever reason, finances, security, ego, whatever it is, not sure your side hustle is going to make it. When did you know that your side hustle, we'll call it, when did you know that that was going to make it for you? How long did that take?
Well, because I jumped around so much, it wasn't until recently when I got, probably in the past year, when I got going with all the podcast related
Okay.
avenues. Yeah, because I tried the drop shipping thing, and a few other things, and none of those really
Okay.
panned out. So, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for, I guess, what, 12, 13 years now, but It wasn't. Well, and I also had an online travel agency,
Oh,
actually.
there you go.
I for some
Add
reason,
that to the
that
list.
slipped my mind. Uh, yeah, I had that for, like, 5 years during all the kind of online, um, testing out different things, and actually, I thought that's what I was gonna end up doing and
Okay,
was on the verge of, doing that full time. But then I started doing the whole podcasting thing and fell more in love with that, and then plus when COVID hit, I had to cancel all my bookings, and with
sure.
being a travel agent, you don't actually get paid until a person travels, so it was like
Ah,
I put in all this work and never got paid on any of those. So that was kind of the nail in the coffin. I was like, I'm more interested in the podcasting, avenue,
sure.
and who knows when people can travel again, and so yeah, I ended up closing that like
Okay.
early 2020, like April, I think, of 2020, somewhere around there. And but yeah, so podcasting has been kind of my main thing since
Okay.
that point.
So is it safe to say, Sarah, for you that it was a situation where you had to kind of really test a bunch of waters before you found something that really worked for you?
Yeah, well, I think one problem with a lot of entrepreneurs is the shiny object syndrome,
Yep.
where we're just constantly thinking of new ideas and we get bored easily and we're like, oh, let me try that, and have our hands in a million different things.
Yep.
So I think that was part of it. But I think ultimately I just had to find that thing, that one thing, and
Gotcha.
it just took a decade
Sure.
or whatever to get there.
Yeah, and I think that thank you for sharing that because I think it's so helpful for the listeners because again, like I said before, entrepreneurs, business owners, whatever you want to call people, they tend to, solopreneurs, whatever you call a business owner, they tend to look like they got it all together. Like, they knew some, I've and there are people that I mean, I had a guy in the show that ever since he was like 4 years old or 5 years old, he would, he was selling little things to kids in the neighborhood, or, he would buy a bag of, Reese's peanut butter cups, for $1, and there was 20 of them in there and sell them each for a dime, whatever. He was at 5 years old, he was doing that stuff, right? So there
Hmm.
are certain people that just know that's going to be their path at an early age. And whether it's a situation like you where it took you a while, there's no right or wrong to it. I love hearing both sides to kind of, encourage the people that are sitting on the sidelines wishing that they could jump in. And that's where, again, I always tell people from 8 to 5 is your company's, and then from 5 to 8 is yours. So if you
Hmm.
do the 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. thing and you have a side hustle, whether it's a travel agent or things like that, I mean, that's awesome. That's the cool part about living in a country like we are in, is we have that freedom to try those things. So,
Hmm.
now that you're in the podcasting world, do you feel like you found your home?
I do, and I think that's basically what was missing with everything else I tried. Was it just something didn't seem right about it? It didn't, but now I feel
Yeah.
I've never used that expression to describe it, but that makes sense that I'm at home. And it was funny that you mentioned that story about the boy selling candy.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was a kid, I did the same thing. I would gather up like free candy and pencils and things, and
Yeah.
then sell them to my friends. So I think that I was probably born with the entrepreneurial gene, if that's
Yep.
a thing, and it's always been there. But it was kind of one of those things where you're told you need to go to college and you need to
Yep.
we were so, I guess, inundated with that you know to go that route and to get a regular job and all this stuff.
Right.
So I just kind of went that route, I guess, and then at a certain point you realize that, well, I guess that's not for me.
Yeah. And if you get total peace in your job right now and you're listening, that's probably a pretty good indication that you're in a great spot. You don't need to, you don't need to be, excuse me, looking around. It's
Hmm.
for the people that are dreading their job. It's the people that show up and, they don't want to be there. I mean, and there's a lot of those people, unfortunately, around. So, excuse me, I think it's, that's the cool part about this is if you're in that spot, there is something that you can do. And whether it's
Mhm.
like you or me, for me, I started my businesses, started one in the 90s, it had $0 coming in. And when I sold it in 2012, we had 10 million in annual sales.
Mhm.
We had 22 people on the team, and you build something and then you get to a point where it's like this thing can run without me, and so you sell it and then you go on to do something else. So again, I just encourage listeners to, whether you're gonna just put your foot in the water a little bit to test it, or you're going to jump off the deep end. Neither one's right or wrong. It just is depending on your personality and what pain tolerance you have, and what
Mhm.
family support you have and things like that. So, but you mentioned earlier about tools that you used or that you found. So I kind of want to help
Mhm.
the listeners if there's, because there's probably somebody listening that says, you know what, I have an idea
Mhm.
and I don't know if it's a good idea. I mean, it's kind of like Shark Tank, right? I mean, it's a mini Shark Tank type thing, except you and I aren't going to be as brutal as them. And all we're here to do is try and encourage people. So, what tools do you recommend to people that might want to, try a business, might want to take their idea to the next level? What do you say the next steps are in that, Sarah?
So I think regardless of what type of business you're doing, you definitely need a website.
Okay.
A lot of people think that just having, a Facebook page or something like that, that's enough, and you should have that. But the problem with that is that's like rented land versus owning your land, basically.
Oh, it's a good point.
Yeah, or like renting. Not that there's anything wrong with renting a house
Yeah.
or an apartment, but
Yep.
um, because with Facebook and all the other social medias, I mean, who knows? MySpace went away overnight. Who knows what could happen with the
Sure.
others?
Yep.
Plus, their algorithms are always changing, and people on your page, like only I think 2 to 3% of them see your thing unless you boost it.
Sure.
And yeah, so you need to be on there, but definitely have a website. And then, and actually, you can do that really affordably because you could get a domain at oneandone.com for $1. That's where I get all mine.
Okay.
And then if you use WordPress, that's free. You just have to pay for hosting, which, you could get as low as like $3 a month.
Okay.
And then you could even create a free logo in Canva or pay someone $5 in
Oh,
Fiverr.
Fiverr. Have you
Yeah.
ever been on Fiverr?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, isn't that crazy? Fiverr.com for anyone listening that wants like almost anything for like almost nothing. Yeah,
Yeah.
some I had a logo done for one of the
Mhm.
ventures that I had for $5. I mean, it's crazy, right? So
Mhm.
So yeah, so I mean, and so now, so I want to just kind of make sure that I get this. So you can go to oneandone.com and you
Mhm.
can get for what, $1, you said?
Mhm.
Get your
Yeah.
domain.
Yeah, I think a certain I think .coms are $1 if you get.
Okay,
Yeah, and then for the first year, and then it's like $15 a year
sure,
after
sure.
that. But
That's a pretty low risk there for $1, right? And then
yeah.
you said WordPress is like $3 a month to host that.
Well, depending on which host you go with, but yeah, some are as low as
Okay,
$3.
okay. So here's a question for you, and there's no right or wrong. Do you think if let's just say I come to you and I want to have, whatever, davemelenda.com,
Mhm.
and I come to you with an idea and I built this website that's like, uh, excuse the word, crappy, right? It's just not good. It doesn't look professional. Which camp are you in? No website is better than a crappy website, or a crappy website's better than no website? Where do you land on that?
Well, I would still say a crappy website is better than no website.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, if you don't want to WordPress is, once you get the hang of it, it's fairly easy. But I mean, there's stuff like Wix and Weebly and Squarespace
Okay.
where it's just drag and drop and simple, and
Okay.
like anyone could use it and make their website look professional. You don't have to spend, $5 or $10,000 on
Sure.
someone to, I guess depending on what you want your site to
Yeah,
do,
for
but for
sure.
the most part. And then, yeah, so, having a website, and then as soon as you start a business, you should have an email marketing platform so
Okay.
that you can continue to market, and send emails to potential customers. And what I use for that is SendFox, and it's actually free. Well, when I signed up, it was free for the first 3,000 subscribers. Now it's just up to 1,000. But what
Okay.
I like about it is, especially for like a blogger, podcaster, or YouTuber, any kind of content creator, you can put in like your YouTube link or your RSS feed, and it'll automatically generate weekly newsletters with whatever new episode you might have.
Wow.
Yeah, so it saves a lot of time.
Yeah. And what's the website on that, Sarah?
Sendfox.com.
SENDFOX.com.
Uh-huh.
Wow, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and another one I like if you're not a content creator, and therefore you don't need to use like the RSS feed stuff, MailerLite also has a free plan, I think up to 1 or 2,000 subscribers, and it's really easy to use. You can create like landing pages and whatnot with it.
Okay.
So yeah, so a website, email marketing, you should have social media. There was one other thing I was gonna mention. It depends on. Obviously, if you're going the podcasting route, well, then I would recommend. I have an ATR 2100. It's only like 60 or $80, the mic.
Oh, okay.
Uh, yeah, so you could start a podcast for under $100. Um, and then if blogging, you could start for free. Basically, you just need the website.
Sure.
Affiliate marketing, you could incorporate in with blogging. Or if you want to be a coach or consultant,
Sure.
you just need a website and email marketing platform.
So when
Really
you
those.
so when you talk about, if you don't mind unpacking the email marketing platform for a little
Mhm.
bit, because so I have this idea. I throw up DaveMelenda.com on the web, and I don't know, pick something. I sell whatever. I sell pencils. Okay. So I sell pencils at DaveMelenda.com, but I have this cool website. I got this really cool pencil, but nobody knows about it, right? Because nobody knows about it because there's how many billions of websites in the world, right?
Mhm.
So the email marketing platform is kind of like how I would get that message out. Is that right?
Well, yeah. It's kind of more probably Facebook ads and things like that is
Okay.
probably more, or social media in general,
Okay.
getting the word out,
Okay.
because the email marketing platform would be more like when someone already is aware and comes to your site and then signs up. Usually the best way to capture someone's email address is to provide some kind of freebie, like a
Okay.
free ebook or something like that.
Okay.
And then once you have their email, then you can, send them emails like, oh, this pencil is on sale, or, something like that, or check out these new pencils. But so the email marketing is more to communicate with people that already know about you to some
Gotcha.
degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, like on your website, it's thesarahstjohn.com.
Uh-huh.
So on that website, you have a free download of your Podcastpreneur,
Mm-hmm.
a free copy of that. So that is telling about podcasting, but then you're actually harvesting that email address,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're turning that's how you do that. So if I was selling
Right.
pencils, I would maybe click here for a free pencil, or some offer that I'm
Mm-hmm.
exchanging something that I have for something that you have, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's an email address, a phone number, whatever information that you want to get. That's what
Mm-hmm.
you kind of then, that's what that email marketing platform is for, is to harvest that type of information then, correct?
Right. Yeah. And people usually call that like a lead magnet. And you can create those for free, actually. What I use is sumo.com.
Okay.
But there's several different ones. Well, that's the sumo.com is how you capture it.
Okay.
Like you see on the website, on my website, where it has like that, well, that bar at the top.
Yep.
But then even if you try to exit the website, something will pop up
Okay.
saying, are you, do you want a copy of Podcastpreneur? So
Gotcha.
that's also Sumo. But then as far as the actual lead magnet itself, I mean, that could be an ebook, an infographic, usually something digital though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, neat. Okay. So then from there, the social media piece is how we get the word out. And then um, what other tools then? I mean, and these are all budget oriented. So I love the
Mhm.
fact that, a lot of this you're saying is free or really low risk. If I don't understand, I guess I'm good at certain things in my life, and what I'm not good at is like all this stuff right here.
Oh, really?
I mean, I can sell something, I can help a business grow, I can, but when it comes to like WordPress, I have
Mm,
zero interest in that. I mean, I have a producer for my podcast because I love this part of it. And then
mhm,
Katie does a fantastic job of everything else. That's, I just learned my strength and I just want to
mhm,
focus on that. Now, sometimes people in a side hustle can't afford to pawn that off on people, right? So they have to kind of do it all themselves.
mhm.
So when you see that, I mean, that's got to probably be one of the hardest things for an entrepreneur is to do things he doesn't like or she doesn't like to do. So on your end, do you delegate that out to other people or do you really enjoy doing all that kind of stuff?
I actually enjoy doing it all. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm pretty much literally like a solopreneur doing
Okay.
everything on my own. And it was because I like doing it that I decided, well, why not get paid to do it for other people?
Sure, exactly.
Um, but yeah, so I mean, depending on what route you go and what kind of online business or what kind of business period, there's different tasks that you'll have that you might not, be interested in. And if you have the budget, you can outsource that.
Sure.
But of course, starting out, a lot of people don't. And
Yep.
so that's,
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I want to make sure people know that it's okay. I mean, there's certain things like attorneys or accountants that,
mm,
most likely you're going to need to get involved at some point. But I know for me, when I started in 2012, this let my positive polarity, I was doing my own invoicing, I was sending them out, I was doing my own accounts receivable, I was doing all that stuff, because there was not a lot of money coming in. So it was pretty
mm-hmm,
easy, right? But then you come to a point, and I want to bring this point home for people that are listening, and the numbers are fictitious, so don't worry about that. Let's just say that you are a consultant for something and you can charge $100 an hour. Well, if you're going to make $100 an hour, but you can find somebody for $25 an hour, and again, the numbers are fictitious, that will do your invoicing for you,
mm-hmm,
jump on that because there's a $75 an hour difference right there. You could be on the phone, on a Zoom call, in front of a company, making your $100 an hour while somebody's back doing your $25 an hour thing. And I run
mm-hmm.
into so many people that struggle with that, Sarah. So I don't know if that's hard for you, but there's a ton of people that struggle with that concept. So is that tough for you?
Yeah, well, that's actually been one area that I have had issues with. Like, I've always the way I've been raised and whatnot is, like a penny pincher and all this stuff. And like if it's something I can do, why not do it? And say, you know, but it's like, okay, well, I hire someone to do my lawn and
Yep.
I'm now doing Instacart. So I'm basically hiring someone to go grocery shopping for me.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
So at a certain point, there's certain tasks that just the amount of time that they take is not worth
Sure.
like uh, how much you would pay someone to do that,
Yep.
it makes more sense than the time
Yeah,
that it would
absolutely.
take you to do it. So I'm actually kind of getting to that point and starting to look at like virtual assistants. I've
Yep.
been kind of reading up and learning about all of that. And I know like apparently in the Philippines you could
Yep.
get like a full-time assistant for like 500 a month.
Yep.
Or I think $3 or $5 per hour or
Yeah.
something.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah. Now, and it's interesting because I was exposed to that early on for myself too. And I chose, like, Katie, my producer, is a virtual assistant for me. She has a master's in communication.
Mm,
So, that's going to be, and you get what you pay for. No offense to anybody that's listening from, another country. That's just, you get what you pay for. And I was exposed to people that said, oh, you got to do this virtual assistant in a different country. They're super cheap. And I get it. But the reality is that it's you do have to be careful because you get what you pay for. Fiverr's a great thing because you tell them what you want as far as the logo and a color, and you give it some
mhm,
idea, and they throw three ideas back. You give them your $5, and life goes on. That's just a one-time thing. I
mhm,
struggled with trying to find the right VA. So, I'm honored to have Katie, help me in that respect because I need somebody to tell me what to do. I think of what Steve Jobs said. We don't hire, you know, dumb people and then tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they tell us what to do.
mm,
And so that's kind of the cool piece of that is that I built my teams with thinking that everybody here has a strength and I want to
mhm,
tap into that. So I think if you're listening and there's no right or wrong to these are just two people's opinions. So that's
mhm,
that's the cool part about it, right? Is,
mhm,
everybody does it a different way. And, Sarah enjoys doing some of that stuff. If you're
mhm,
listening and you enjoy invoicing or you enjoy creating a website, go for it. Just
mhm.
remember that the one thing we're limited on is our time. And
Yeah.
right, we only have so many hours in a day. And that's all I'm saying is I'd rather make the money, talk to the customer, and then delegate that, like you said, where you're cutting your grass or you're doing my shopping for them, you know. So that's a cool part there. Are there any other tools that you recommend for people on a budget that want to jump into, trying to do an online business?
Yeah, so let's see, I mentioned the email marketing platform. Um, King Sumo is another it's the same family of uh, I think AppSumo is the company name, but they create SendFox and what was the other one I mentioned? Sumo.
Mailer Lite?
No, that's a separate
Oh,
company.
gotcha. Okay.
But they also do King Sumo
Okay.
and it's free. And basically what that is, and this is one way to get leads or email contacts, is doing a giveaway. So like every month I do I usually I give away a book.
Okay.
And so you could run ads to that if you wanted to, but right now I've built up my email list enough to where I just send it out to my email list.
Okay.
I used to run ads to the giveaways, but um, yeah, so now I just send it to just as a nice thing to. Yeah, I like giving stuff away that like books that I've read and gotten something out of. I like
Sure.
to give away, and so basically so I have this page on my website, so it's thesarahstjohn.com/giveaway, and
Okay.
that's the same all the time, but every month I change out what book or item that I'm giving away. And then I just put out a little like 30-second podcast episode about it. I email my list and that's about it.
Okay.
Um, but what's nice about it is it's free to run your giveaway through King Sumo, and so when someone signs up, then they can get extra entries by whatever you want them to do, like or share on Facebook or listen to this podcast episode or watch this YouTube video or visit this website. You could have 10 or 20 different things listed and assign whatever point value. So then they get more entries and
Okay.
higher chance to win. But the thing about giveaways that I would advise is that to not do a giveaway of an item that anybody and everybody would want. Like you wouldn't want to give away an iPhone, for example, because everyone is going to sign up for that. And then as soon as the giveaway's over, they're all going to unsubscribe and drop from your list.
Gotcha. Okay.
So give away something that's relevant to your audience. So I always give away some kind of entrepreneurial book.
Okay. So usually like an ebook then too?
No, actually I do actual physical books. So I'll mail it out to
Oh
them.
my gosh. So you buy the book and then you send it out to people?
Yeah. But I
Wow.
mean, so that's maybe like a $25 investment.
Sure.
Um, but I think it's worth doing.
Yeah.
And for someone to, so if they're already on your list, you already have their email address. But like say you run an ad to it or something and someone signs up, they definitely have to be pretty targeted and to be willing to give up their email address to potentially win a $20 book, you
Oh, so you're
know.
just giving one book away a month. I gotcha. Okay.
Yes, uh-huh,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, just 1 book a month. Um,
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's a great idea. So, and that builds, that's a way that you build your email list.
mhm, yeah, you
Gotcha.
can build your email list that way and then also kind of, uh, I guess with your current list, kind of, get some, what's the word I'm looking for? Some momentum, I guess, some
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
dialogue and
Yep.
to remind them who you are and that
Sure.
you're, and
So
whatnot.
then, so would you put that out on LinkedIn? Are you a LinkedIn? Are you a LinkedIn fan?
Yeah, I mean, I've had LinkedIn for forever, but it's only been the past few months that I've really been actively using it. And I
Okay.
find so far that's actually been a lot more um, productive than Facebook and those
Yeah.
types of places.
Yeah. I mean, no offense to anybody that enjoys Facebook. I don't do anything with it. I have people, my virtual assistants, put stuff out on there. But I think that LinkedIn is the business side that's just so much more successful. So would you then monthly put on LinkedIn a link to your free, sign
Hmm.
up for your free book, so to speak, and then you harvest your emails that way?
Yeah, I do.
Awesome.
I put
Okay.
it out to all the social platforms as well as any podcast episodes. And then any like when I'm a guest on someone else like this,
Yeah.
I always create like my own little blog post about it and send that out to email and
Okay.
social media as well.
Sure. Okay.
So,
And that's the thing, I guess, is as we start to come in for a landing on this, it's so hard to think about these little minute ideas and how, I mean, I just want to, we talked about this before we jumped on. I get bored super easy, and like I just like, if it's not like, that's why I say this to people all the time. I'll never be able to play an instrument, a musical
mm.
instrument, because if I can't pick that thing up and just rip a solo like the best in the world, like in 10 minutes, I invest in the years, right? I mean, you see these guys do whatever, drum solo, whatever it is, right? And I'm like, man, I'm in awe. And I'm like, that's it. I'm doing it. I make the decision. And then I look into it for a minute. This just happened with bees. I had this thing where I'm like, in 2021, I'm going to have beehives and make my own honey. Right. I thought this is awesome. And talk to my wife and I say, man, we're going to do this, is going to be fantastic. Right. We got the land for it. I started looking, Sarah, online, and there's like 42 steps to this thing. There's
Mm.
this way more involved. I'm like, you know what? It took me all of 10 minutes to realize this is never going to happen to me, right? And it's just, and sorry, that's a long way of asking the question, but how do you keep people focused? Because if it was me and I was purely worried about one thing, selling something, getting something, whatever, I would expect to do one post and I'd be mad when the phone didn't ring like off the hook, right? So how do you help people with that? Because an entrepreneur, that's how they're built. I mean,
Mm.
what's your advice for them?
Yeah, and that's how I have been for, the past decade.
Yeah.
I think when you finally find that thing, like for me, podcasting,
Yep.
it's you suddenly have more patience, I think, to stick with it and
Okay.
to not give up. And because like with podcasting, for example, they say, oh, it can take like 3 years or something for your audience to really big up or pick up, or for you to see momentum and growth and all this stuff.
Sure.
um and so that sounds, like a long time and overwhelming.
Right.
uh but and with all the other past ventures I've done, it's kind of like that. I post one thing and then nothing happens. I'm like, well, that's not gonna work out.
Right? I mean, my gosh, where the heck is the instant overnight success? That's what I want, right? And I'm like, crap,
Uh,
this is no good. If this didn't work, forget it, you know? So I have to really
mm,
practice. And I just didn't know if you run into people as you're, helping them at Podseam trying to
mm,
do their podcast. I mean, are you telling people, hey, plan don't, this is a marathon, not a
mhm.
sprint type thing? Is that's got to be hard for some entrepreneurs to hear.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely give them like, what to expect and the blueprint, and I do some coaching and whatnot, and kind of like listen to their podcast, like if they already have one, for
Yeah,
example, um, and offer, suggestions and things like that. And so kind of coaching them through that. And I think that is frustrating for some people, although a lot of people are now, they already have an established business and they're just adding a podcast
right.
onto it as like an extra way to market or to become more known or to be seen and heard.
Sure.
Like even Wendy's supposedly has a podcast now. I mean, like, like big companies are like, what?
Wendy's the hamburger place?
Yeah, like why would you? I don't know. Why would Wendy's need a podcast? I haven't listened to it yet, but apparently it's it's not.
Wow. Well, if
Yeah,
it's like Dave Thomas coming back from the dead, I'm listening to it then. Wow. That's
because I
interesting.
because I think at a certain point, uh, for every business owner, it's going to be kind of expected to have a podcast. Just like it's pretty much expected to have a website.
Yeah,
Like we were talking earlier. Like if I'm thinking about using someone for business or going to their restaurant or whatever, and they don't have a website, then
sure,
I basically give up on them and move on to the next thing, because I want to look at a menu and this, that, and the
sure.
other, pricing and whatever. And I feel like with podcasting, it at a certain point, it might get to that point, like you need a podcast
Yeah,
as
that's
another
a good
mark.
point. Yeah, I never
Yeah.
thought of that.
Yeah. So some people, they build their business around a podcast, but other people might already have a business
Sure.
and then use a podcast to help
Yeah,
grow that business.
that's so true. And I tell a lot of people that, are if they're looking to grow their business. I mean, I do a lot of sales training, so I do a lot of work with sales professionals. And I said, if you're looking to grow your business, if you're looking to grow your book of business, if you're looking to grow your sales, your exposure, whatever, I mean, start with just being guests on podcasts. I know it's
Mm-hmm.
a daunting thing to start a podcast. It's daunting to think every week. When I remember when I first started, I was like, all right, write down every name that you can think of people that you didn't be able to invite. And then once you tap that list, it's like, okay, now what, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's hard to keep the momentum like you talked about before. But I think being a guest on a podcast
Mm-hmm.
is really gives you the taste. I was a guest on probably, I want to say, a half a dozen shows, around the Milwaukee area before I jumped in. And then once I jumped in, all of a sudden I got a request from Australia. I got some requests from other states. And then it's like, that momentum, like you said, is building. So
Mm-hmm.
um, do you find that it's just as successful for you to be a guest as to have your own podcast? Do you notice a big difference between the two for you?
Yeah, and a lot of people would probably say, well, if you have your own podcast, why would you need to guest on other podcasts? But I think whether you have your own podcast or not, you should be guesting on other podcasts because you're you're leveraging that person's audience,
Sure.
and if you're on their show, then it's obviously a relevant topic and you may get more business that way. Or if you have a podcast and you're on someone else's podcast, well, obviously the people listening, they're podcast listeners. So the chances that they'll, check out your podcast are actually pretty high
Right.
compared to like doing a Facebook ad about, hey, listen to my podcast. I mean, not many people are going to go off of social media and go into an app but
Sure.
if they're already in an app listening to a podcast, that's easy for them to do. So yeah, definitely guesting. And in some ways, I mean, I recommend, even if you don't think starting your own podcast is the way to go, to definitely guest. And in some ways, it might actually be more lucrative in a way because then you don't have to worry about building up your own listener base and you're, leveraging those podcasts.
Right. Yeah.
So I do both, but I definitely recommend, whether you have a podcast or not, you definitely should guest on
Sure.
podcasts.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think it's a great place to start, get your feet wet. It's pretty low risk. You kind of get the sense of if you like it or not. And again, part of it is who you're on with, because train wrecks happen. When there's nothing to talk about, or you're making, I mean, I've seen some train wrecks over my time, and I haven't been in podcasting that long, so I'm still learning as I go. So again, I appreciate you sharing this information with us today. So I mean, that the tools that you talked about are just really solid, low cost, if any cost, type of things to get you started, just to determine if you really have this idea and it can turn into something. And,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I think, I mean, I remember when I wrote my book, and we released on Cyber Monday a couple years ago. And it was so cool because like it instantly went to Amazon bestseller in 3 different categories. And I'm like, who's buying? I was like fighting this whole time writing this book, going, no one's going to read this. No one's going to read this. Then I find out the average book, like 99 point something percent of books, never make more than 100 copies. They never sell more than 100 copies. So when we sold, way more than that in the first day, it was like, what the heck? So then I call my dad, and he lives in San Diego. I'm like, did you just buy a ton of books? Because, I still was messing with that head trash, and he's like, no, I didn't buy any. So it was cool. He ended up buying 12 at the end of the day. But I think that, it's so cool to be able to try something before you really invest a ton of time and energy, because you don't know if your idea is going to take off. I mean, so, and like you said, Sarah, it took a while before you knew that pod seam was going to take off,
Mm-hmm.
and so now you look back and go, whew, man, it's a good thing I stayed with it. And it's a good thing that I took that risk. So, I'm excited to see where that takes you. So, a couple more questions, and then I'm going to let you go. If you would have a tip of the week, what would be Sarah St. John's tip of the week for an entrepreneur listening right now?
I actually have a couple. One is to be aware of the shiny object syndrome, and like we had
Come
mentioned.
on, that's too close to home. Give me an easier one, okay?
Okay, let's
I'm
see.
just kidding. Go ahead, finish that one. The shiny object syndrome.
Yeah, and just try not to. I mean, it is kind of a natural thing for entrepreneurs, but at a certain point, pick something,
Yeah,
and go with it. Another piece of advice that I've learned is that, starting out, it's important to learn and educate yourself and, read books and listen to podcasts and all that stuff. And you should continue to do that.
sure,
But at a certain point, if you're not implementing what you're learning, then it's kind of pointless.
sure.
So basically, what I do now is I try to do, for every hour I spend learning, I spend another hour implementing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which it's kind of tough because
I'm not an implementer. I like reading and then telling someone else to do it. So that's really good. Because yeah, wow, an hour learning and then an hour implementing that. Because I'm like at a book a month type of thing. You know, that's about where I'm at. I usually take the summer off, but now I'm back into it. And so I'm reading a book a month at that clip about, and I look back and I go, I read 20 books or whatever. And I'm like, what do you remember about any of those 20, right? So that's where
Right.
I'm kind of like, you know, that's a new thing for me, trying to figure out how to like retain all that stuff that you learn. So
Hmm.
wow, that's so
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for those tips. You know, that's a huge help. The last question that I have before I let you go is, what's one thing that most people don't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing?
I guess, well, you earlier you were talking about playing instruments
Yeah.
and how I actually play the drums. Yeah.
Like still to this day?
Well, I haven't in a while because I sold my drum set
Uh-oh.
a couple
Your
years
neighbors
ago.
were happy you sold the drum set, I bet, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I probably sold it, so I don't even remember now. Probably to have more money for business stuff. I don't know.
So do you think you'll get back into it?
I'd like to. I would like to actually get an electric set so that I can like plug in headphones and listen that way so that it's not as loud to
Okay,
everybody
sure.
else. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
so
my
I,
gosh, that is so cool. Well, I hope I didn't offend you. I just can't.
oh no.
My gosh, I envy people that can read music, and I envy people that can pick up a guitar or an instrument, drums, because I
Mm.
pick up drums and they, if I would, you know, even attempt to, it would be, you know, it just looks terrible. Sounds even worse, you know, and so you guys just make it look seamless. So that's so cool. So awesome. Well, Sarah, thanks for hanging out with me today. If somebody wants to learn more about Pod Scene, they want to learn more about you, they might want to, you know, just unpack some of the stuff that we talked about today. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Well, actually, I have 3 books, and I give them away for free, the PDF version,
Okay.
at thesarahstjohn.com/free,
Okay.
and that's Sarah with an H, and then St. John is STJOHN,
Okay.
and, that's Frugalpreneur, Podcastpreneur, and then another book called Authorpreneur.
Wow.
So, yeah. So that's probably the best way,
Okay.
and then podseam.com is the production agency.
Okay. So it's thesarahstjohn.com is the best website, and then you can get connected there. That's so cool.
Mhm.
Wow.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much. I'm honored that you shared some time with us, and I wrote a bunch of notes. So now I have to figure out how to implement this. This is always the worst part of the podcast for me, is when I'm done and I'm super excited about what I learned, and then I'm like, oh crud, now what? So thank you for that now what thing. So that's awesome. But I learned a ton, and I'm sure the listeners did as well. And again, thank you so much. Go Cowboys. I'm definitely a Cowboys fan. So even though I live in Milwaukee, I much prefer to see Dallas, even though I don't know why they can't win anymore. But
Yeah,
you
they
know,
keep dropping like flies,
oh my
like the
gosh,
different
yeah.
players.
So yeah, so thank you, Sarah, and look forward to reading some books and learning more. So I appreciate your time.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Take care.